The air smelled of decay. Robin didn't remember when he last took a clean breath in that house. The wallpaper hung in shreds, like old skin peeling off a corpse. The creaking wooden floors beneath his feet groaned as though they too wanted him to leave. But Robin couldn't leave. Not now. Ugh, this has sucked. He'd inherited this place, the Ellman house, from an uncle he barely knew. Everyone in the family avoided speaking about it. It was one of those properties people looked at but never bought. The kind you drove past and instinctively averted your eyes from. "You're not scared, are you?" Robin muttered to himself, his voice thin in the eerie silence. He tried to shake it off, but there was something wrong here. The house felt awake. He hated how the shadows seemed to stretch toward him. He looked for his hammer, but it was gone. His arms and legs ached. Robin gripped his flashlight tighter as he moved into the hallway. That's when he heard it. A whisper. It wasn't a gust of wind. It wasn't the house settling. It was a voice. Robin. His heart slammed into his ribs. "Who's there?" he shouted, spinning around. The beam of the flashlight swept over peeling walls and broken furniture. "No one." Robin swallowed. But he wasn't. He knew he wasn't. An unearthly voice. Robin didn't plan on staying the night, but curiosity was a stronger pull than common sense. He sat on the rotting couch in what used to be the living room. The flashlight now sat on the coffee table, its dim glow flickering as though something sucked its power. Then the whisper came again, closer this time. "Robin, let me out." Robin shot to his feet, breathing heavily. His skin prickled with ice-cold fear. His head began to throb, and the pain inside him grew hard. "Who's there?" he demanded again. Silence. Robin cursed under his breath, pacing. "No one's here. No one's here." Robin selected 2 sorcerers. "Robin campfire." But his voice trembled. He could feel it now. A presence. Something unseen but so horribly there. "Maybe it's the stress," he muttered to himself. Maybe. But then came the sound of something dragging, a slow, scraping noise from upstairs. Robin froze. "Okay," he said aloud. "Okay, I'm losing it." He grabbed his bag, deciding he'd had enough, but before he could leave, a photograph fell off the wall. In the center of it stood a small, older woman. The sound of glass shattering made him jump. He turned slowly, trembling. The photo lay face up. It was an old picture of a family. His uncle, Robin realized, as a young man with other relatives. One face in the photo had been scratched out. Robin's blood turned to ice. Robin wasn't staying. No way. He grabbed his bag and bolted for the door. The handle turned, but the door wouldn't budge. No, he yanked and pulled, but it felt like it was glued shut. Ah, and then he heard it. From the top of the stairs came a sound, a faint, irregular thumping, like someone dragging themselves down. He never could guess. "What's that?" cried one of the cadets, blue spotted bot turning rapidly and fighting. Robin turned slowly. His breath caught in his throat. The flashlight flickered wildly, casting erratic beams over the staircase. At first, he saw nothing. But then, something moved. A figure, hunched and crawling on all fours, descended the stairs. Its limbs were wrong, bending in ways that made Robin's stomach churn. It wasn't walking, it was jerking itself forward, its head lolling as though its neck had been broken. Shelley said. And then the flashlight went out. Robin screamed, fumbling with the light. "No! Come on! When it turned back on, the figure was at the bottom of the stairs. It was a woman, or what was left of one. Her skin was gray and peeling, her mouth twisted into an impossible grin that stretched ear to ear. Her eyes were just black voids, dripping something dark. The way she moved made me suddenly horrified. Her legs clapped up to her body, groaning slightly. The groaning pain rifled through my system. "Robin, let me out." The voice came from her, but her lips never moved. Robin backed up, his legs unsteady. "What the hell do you want? Stay away." The thing just tilted its head slowly, that horrible grin never fading. Robin bolted into the hallway, his heart pounding so hard he thought it might burst. He didn't know where he was running, he just needed to get away. But as he turned a corner, he slammed into something hard. He looked up, and she was there. She was the first one in a month. It was hard to believe. The same broken woman, inches from his face, grinning, grinning, grinning. "Robin, you can't leave." Robin screamed again and stumbled back. He ran into what looked like a dining room and slammed the door behind him. "Oh no. Think," he panted, hands shaking. He braced the door with a chair and looked around desperately. It was a dead end. But then he noticed something on the table. A journal. It was old and stained, but the name on the front made his stomach drop. Uncle Richard Ellman. Robin snatched it up and flipped it open, scanning the first few pages. The spirit in the house must never be freed. It whispers promises, but it is a liar. It is death. Robin's eyes widened. "What the hell did you do, Uncle?" Suddenly, the door behind him shook violently. "Robin," the voice seeped through the wood, accompanied by a sound, a low, guttural growl. Robin pressed his back against the wall, clutching the journal. "Leave me alone," he shouted. The shaking stopped. Silence. Robin's breathing slowed, and for a moment, he thought it might be over. But then, a whisper slid into his ear. "Look behind you." Robin's heart stopped. He didn't want to look. Every muscle in his body screamed at him to run, but he couldn't move. He felt it, something cold, breathing down the back of his neck. Slowly, he turned his head, and there she was, inches from him, smiling. Robin didn't remember when or how he blacked out, but when he woke up, he was lying on the cold, splintered wooden floor of the dining room. The journal was still clenched tightly in his hands, his knuckles pale. For a second, he thought maybe it had been a nightmare. Maybe none of it had been real. Then he heard it again, the slow, dragging thump of something moving above him. Robin bolted upright, his breath ragged. He glanced toward the ceiling, which creaked with each slow, deliberate movement, the sound of something heavy and wet shifting. "Just don't get disturbed," Prime whispered into a muzzled nose. "Where's sleeping here?" Hammer exclaimed it aloud. He whispered to himself, "I can't stay here. I need to get out. I need to..." His words trailed off as the noise stopped. Silence. Robin's eyes darted to the ceiling. The air grew still, thick with suffocating dread. He held his breath. Then, bam, the ceiling above him cracked, a hole splitting open as a gray, gnarled hand shot through, its nails blackened and sharp. Robin screamed and scrambled backward, just as the thing's arm jerked and pulled at the splintering wood. The combination of pain, horror, and fear left Robert crying out in pain. "Get away! Leave me alone!" Robin shouted, his voice a panicked roar. He bolted for the door he had barricaded earlier. Without looking back, he kicked the chair out of the way, grabbed the handle, and prayed. This time, it turned. Robin nearly sobbed with relief as he stumbled into the dark hallway, slamming the door behind him. Robin didn't stop moving. He ran through the dark corridors of the Ellman house, searching desperately for an exit. Every turn looked the same. Peeling wallpaper, rotting floorboards, and the overwhelming feeling of being watched. Her eyes bloodshot, To see her hanging there, hands on the books, holding the door. His flashlight flickered as he whispered to himself, "I need to find a way out. I need to find a way." A scream further down the weir caught my attention. "Fud." Robin froze. From somewhere deep in the house, he heard the thud again. Steady, rhythmic, like a heartbeat. His flashlight flickered and sputtered, the system still maliciously compromised. "Doubt now," Robin groaned, smacking the light. The beam steadied, and Robin saw something new at the end of the hallway. A door. He hadn't noticed it before. It looked different from the others. The wood was darker, the edges carved with strange symbols that made his skin crawl. But more terrifying than that was the sound coming from the other side. High-pitched and loud. Slow, deliberate knocks, as though someone, or something, knew he was there. Robin's mouth went dry. "Don't open it, Robin. Just keep walking." But his feet didn't listen. They carried him forward, step by agonizing step, until he was standing in front of the door. The knocking stopped. Robin stood motionless, his trembling hand reaching for the handle. "Don't," he whispered to himself. "Don't do it." But he turned the handle anyway. The door swung open with an ominous creak. The room beyond was pitch black, save for a faint, flickering light from a single candle resting on a wooden table. Robin stepped inside, his flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. "Hello?" he called, his voice small. The door slammed shut behind him. Robin spun around, his heart pounding. "No!" He ran to the door, shaking the handle. It wouldn't budge. Within the time span his unconsciousness, he had perhaps only seconds before fallen on the floor. Recall, "I'm high." Robin staggered up the stairs. From behind him, a voice whispered, "Robin, sit." Robin turned slowly, and his flashlight fell on the table. Across from the candle sat a figure, a man hunched forward, his face hidden by shadows. The only thing Robin could see was the man's hands, thin, pale, and unnaturally still. Who are you?" Robin stammered. The figure's head jerked upward, and Robin saw his uncle's face. Or rather, what was left of it. Uncle Richard's skin hung loose, as though he had been stretched too far, his lips torn into a grotesque half-smile. None of the stubble had been suppressed, not even the scalps. His eyes rose to the sky. "Robin," the thing crooned in a voice that dripped with malice. "You came back. You shouldn't have come back." Robin staggered backward, nearly dropping the flashlight. "You're dead. You're dead. What more do you need from the devil than blood?" Richard's smile widened impossibly. "And so will you be," said Alden. Suddenly, the candlelight flared, casting grotesque shadows on the walls. Robin turned to run, but something grabbed his ankle. He screamed, looking down to see a hand, thin, bony fingers, clawing at him from beneath the floorboards. "Are you okay?" Rupert croaked as he approached Robin in the bathroom. His room apparently was not as different as he thought. "Let me go!" Robin shouted, kicking violently. The hand released him, but more hands began to emerge from the cracks in the floor. He stumbled toward the table and snatched the candle, throwing it toward the hands. The room plunged into darkness as the flame was snuffed out. Then something again, farther up. Travis crawled for the hood, desperate. Robin's flashlight flickered back to life, but what it revealed made his blood run cold. The walls were covered in faces. Stretched, screaming faces, frozen in expressions of agony. Their mouths opened and closed, but no sound came out. Robin dropped the flashlight, the beam spinning wildly across the room as he screamed. Robin didn't know how, but he managed to break the door open. He ran, half blind, down the endless hallway as a chorus of whispers rose behind him. "Robin, you're ours now." The whispers grew louder, turning into a shrieking wail. Robin looked back, and his flashlight revealed a shambling horde of figures crawling after him. Broken limbs, gaping mouths, and black, hollow eyes. He screamed and ran faster, his breath ragged. The hallway stretched endlessly, no doors, no escape. "Help me!" Robin cried, his voice breaking. Ahead, he saw a faint glow of moonlight filtering through a broken window. His escape. The figures shrieked behind him, their voices a cacophony of torment. Robin lunged forward, reaching for the window. He could feel their cold hands clawing at his ankles, his arms. No, no! With a final burst of strength, Robin threw himself through the glass. Robin hit the ground hard, the wind knocked from his lungs. He lay still, staring up at the night sky. For a moment, there was only the sound of his breathing. Robin was aware that the long, familiar pounding music was now muffled, more like a silent child. Robin could barely move if he tried to. He was outside. He'd escaped. Robin sat up slowly, looking back at the house. It loomed silently in the moonlight, its broken windows staring like empty eyes. His face lit completely until the other shadow came out and began talking aloud. Hector began to say something, but Robin stopped him and called his name. He exhaled shakily. "It's over." Then, from behind him, a whisper. Robin, why did you leave?" Robin froze. Slowly, he turned his head. Standing in the shadows of the trees was the woman, her gray skin, her twisted grin, and her black, hollow eyes. Robin's scream echoed into the night. Robin's scream was swallowed by the silence of the night. He scrambled to his feet, bloodied and gasping, his eyes fixed on the woman in the shadows. She didn't move, just stood there, her head tilted, her grin stretching wider. "Stay away from me," Robin shouted, his voice ragged. He stumbled backward, every muscle in his body screaming for him to run. But the woman stepped forward. Her movement was unnatural, jerking like a marionette with cut strings. The shadows clung to her, twisting and writhing like living things. With each step, the air grew colder, as if the night itself was dying. Robin turned and ran. His legs burned. His lungs ached. But he didn't stop. He tore through the forest behind the house, branches slashing at his skin. Every few seconds, he glanced back. She was still there. No matter how fast he ran, she floated behind him. Her black eyes never blinked, never looked away. "Robin, you'll never escape." The voice didn't come from her mouth. It was inside his head, echoing like a broken record. "Shut up! Shut up!" Robin screamed as he tripped over a root, crashing to the ground. He rolled onto his back, clutching his chest. The woman stood over him now, her twisted face blocking the moonlight. Her grin was wide enough to split her cheeks, black ooze dripping from the corners of her mouth. "You opened the door, Robin. You let me out." Robin shook his head violently. "I didn't. What do you want from me?" Her voice was soft now, like a mother's whisper. The ground beneath Robin began to tremble. The air grew thick, suffocating him. Suddenly, dark hands burst from the earth, clawing at his arms and legs. Robin screamed as they dragged him downward. "No, no, stop!" The woman crouched, her face inches from his. Her voice turned low, guttural. "You belong to me now." With a final, inhuman scream, Robin was pulled into the earth. The ground closed above him, leaving only silence. Robin woke with a gasp, his lungs heaving for air. He was back in the Ellman house, the dining room, the same splintered floorboards and rotting walls. "No," he whispered, "this isn't real." He looked down at his hands. They were covered in dirt and blood. The journal lay open on the floor beside him, its pages now blank. Sound of footsteps grew closer. Robin stood shakily, his mind spinning. I got out. I left this place. Then he heard it again. The whispers. Robin, we're waiting. Robin turned slowly. The living room door stood open, and beyond it stretched the hallway, longer than before, impossibly dark. Figures stood at the far end, dozens of them, their heads tilted, their mouths open in silent screams. I have to go, Robin said through a clenched nose. I will go no place until you die and give me your head, no matter the cost. Robin's heart pounded as he backed away. You can't escape. The voice came from behind him. Robin spun around and saw his reflection in a cracked, filthy mirror. Except it wasn't him. The reflection smiled, a wide, twisted grin, and reached through the glass. Robin screamed as cold hands gripped his throat, pulling him closer. Let me go, please. And finally, his pleas echoed through the empty house as his reflection dragged him into the mirror. The glass rippled like water, then stilled. Robin was gone. In the days that followed, no one came looking for Robin. The Ellman house sat quiet, forgotten by the world, its windows staring out like empty sockets. Inside, the whispers never stopped. In the hallway mirror, Robin watched. His face was pale, his mouth frozen in a silent scream as he pounded on the inside of the glass. From outside, the whispers called. The woman's voice echoed softly. Robin, let me out. And somewhere, deep within the house, another door opened. And thought